Chief Executive of Groundwork UK. I'll be doing some scene setting and talking about our strategy and our approach to the issue at hand today. I'm delighted that I'll then be able to hand the baton to Kate, one of our friends, supporters from Grosvenor, who will talk about some of the self-same issues from Grosvenor's perspective, and then introducing my colleague Venetia, who'll be bringing some of this to life based on some examples of the work that we do in Greater Manchester. So as I said at the outset, these are a series of briefings talking about some of the issues that we're interested in and we're exploring and that we want to talk to other people about working together on. They're designed to be quite informal sessions, quite rapid. We'll talk to you a bit. We'd be delighted if you wanted to contribute in any way you see fit. All those usual options are available. You can use a chat function as we go to comment and ask questions. We will try and get through this so that there's time at the end if anybody wants to properly ask a question and further the conversation. If you just want to sit back and listen with a cup of coffee and get in touch with us afterwards, drop us a line, by all means do that too. My colleague Gary is behind the scenes working the slides, so in time-honoured fashion. Can we move on, Gary, and get cracking? So I just wanted to take a step back to begin with for those who may be relatively new to us and talk about where this idea of Groundwork came from and what we're trying to do and how that developed over time. So as a charity, we began life more than 40 years ago now against a backdrop of economic decline and industrial restructuring in the UK. But it was also a time when there were the first stirrings of consciousness about things like global warming. Climate change as a phrase wasn't necessarily around at the time, but those sentiments and that understanding was beginning to be recognised. So when we were beginning, other movements and organisations like Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth were also mobilising late 70s and early 80s. But our specific mission was to support communities to address the physical signs of that decline, that industrial decline, and use that as a springboard for social and economic recovery. But it was also to bring to life this concept of local to global. So if you look after the environment on your doorstep, we're more likely to be able to tackle together the bigger environmental problems that we were facing. So that was what was enshrined in the Groundwork idea right at the outset. But there were some principles that were really important to the way we went about our work. The first principle was that we did nothing on our own. We recognized that some of the big structural problems that we were attempting to address cannot be solved by an individual organization, an individual charity. So partnership has been the kind of lifeblood of what we do for 4 decades plus. The second principle was that this was about supporting people to improve their capability and their capacity to do the things that they wanted to do in their areas, in their neighborhoods, in their lives, in order to make a difference to the world around them. So that kind of people-led approach was, again, in the DNA from the outset. And then the third principle is that it was all about getting stuff done. It was all about practical action, being really pragmatic, dealing with the things that you see around you, designing solutions to problems as they arise, and working in conjunction with partners and with communities in order to make a physical, often practical change to the quality of life in local areas. So if we move on, Gary, to the next slide, a lot has changed in the last 4 decades. But I think those core principles have remained central to the work that Groundwork does. We're still focused on places, thinking about the physical environment of those places, but also the social infrastructure in those places. We're still delivering regeneration and recovery, especially stimulating economic activity in areas that may feel left behind by the mainstream. And we're still focused on equipping and empowering people to take action on the issues that matter to them. And one of the most pressing issues that people talk to us about, and we talk to people about at the moment, are the issues of climate change, the loss of biodiversity, environmental challenges and decline. And the most important thing about our work, which has stayed consistent throughout all of those 40 years, is that we try and do things in an integrated, in a joined up way, trying to address those social, economic, and environmental issues through the same activities, the same initiatives, delivering multiple outcomes from the same investment. And that's what really makes Groundwork tick. And when it goes well, that's what I think separates us from many of the other things that you see going on in and with communities. So if we move on to the next slide, I just wanted to give you a quick illustration of what we look like. Again, for those that may be new to us and how we operate. So Groundwork is actually a collection of 15 organisations working around the UK. When we all join up together, we've got that national scale. Individually, we've got local reach into thousands of communities around the country. And if you see the numbers down the left-hand side, there's some relatively big numbers go through our system in terms of what we put into our work, the number of people involved, and the outcomes and the outputs that are delivered as a result of all of that investment. Coming to the kind of core of the conversation, if we go on to the next slide, Gary, those 15 organisations in Groundwork have agreed a collective strategy. This is what it looks like when it's all on a page. And like everybody else's strategy, it tries to set out what it is that we want to deliver, so the change we want to bring about in the world, how we think we'll go about our work. So, you know, what are the commitments underpinning our approach? What's the impact that we're trying to have when we deliver that activity? And there's also sections in here about how we'll improve our own quality and capability to be better at what we do and to broaden our reach and deepen our impact. The thing that we want to concentrate on in these briefings are the goals on the right-hand side of our strategies. So there are 4 areas in which we've collectively agreed we either want to grow our impact, increase our scale, innovate to find new solutions, or crucially to build new relationships and partnerships so that we can take our work further and support more people. Today, we're going to be focusing on the second of those goals, if we move on, Gary, and that's our goal around helping to build the green economy. So helping people to get jobs has always been core to what Groundwork does, and going back in history again to the early 80s, a lot of what we did at that point was integrated with work with the Manpower Services Commission to try and support employability as well as delivering regeneration. As a result of that experience, we've been in and out of most contracted government provision around back to work services over those 40 years, various new deals and future jobs funds and kickstarts and everything else that you can imagine. But we've also been developing and delivering our own models of support for people who are furthest removed from the labour market, in particular intermediate labour market models, green teams, placement programmes and the like. Alongside that, we've pioneered over those years programs of business support and sustainability advice, especially for SMEs, and delivered a range of enterprise development programs, again, especially focused on the green economy and green enterprise. So this is one of those areas that's core to our mission, bringing together social justice and environmental sustainability. We all know now that climate change impacts first and worst on those people in society who have least choice, least protection, and who are also likely to be the most economically vulnerable. But we also know that as the green economy grows, there is a risk that some miss out on the benefits that it will bring. Those people who are already at the back of the queue in terms of the labour market are least likely to be able to benefit from that transition to a green economy. So building equity into that transition is one of the things that we're really focused on at the moment. And that underpins some of the work that we're doing at a national scale. One of the examples in our system at the moment is a programme called New to Nature, which has been providing trainees with 12-month waged work placements, trainees specifically targeted from underrepresented groups in the land and nature sector. So young people with disabilities, young people from minority ethnic backgrounds, young people from low-income households. There are 95 young people who are coming to the end of their first year of waged placements at the moment, and we'll be celebrating that towards the end of the month. So this kind of approach doesn't just kind of benefit people who are being given new pathways into work. It also helps to diversify some of the sectors of the economy that I think we all know as well are amongst the least diverse. And that applies to a range of sectors. So we've got a long history of working in the land and nature sector. We've also been doing some interesting work around waste and resources and the circular economy. And then there's a growing area of our work which is linked to energy efficiency advice and retrofit programs. So I'm going to stop here. I'm delighted to be able to hand over to Kate from Grosvenor, who have been a brilliant supporter of ours over the last few years, helping us to develop and deliver activity and change lives across a number of these sectors. I'll leave it to Kate to pick up the story from here.
Brilliant. Thanks, Graham. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. So I'm Kate, Social Impact Director at Grosvenor Property UK. I've been with Grosvenor for coming up to 10 years now in a range of roles across development, corporate affairs, and now sustainability, where I lead on our social sustainability work. So People and Planet Positive is how we talk about our overarching approach to sustainability, which is all about creating sustainable places where businesses, communities, and nature can thrive. So a little bit about Grosvenor, if we can move on, please, Gary. For anyone unfamiliar with us as a company, we're a 340-year-old property business, which really offers us the opportunity to create better places for the next century, not just this one. And in the UK, we've developed and managed places both in central London and in several regional cities where we own almost 1,400 assets, from offices to shops to restaurants and homes. So we play many different roles. We're a place manager, we're a place investor, a place developer. And when coupled with that genuinely long-term mindset and such a diverse portfolio, that offers us a very unique, privileged position in being able to look at the real long-term and both social and environmental alongside commercial benefit in everything we do. So if we could move on, Gary. Our strategy, People and Planet Positive, has 7 pillars. On the right, we have our environmental aims, which focus on our net zero strategy, our approach to waste, nature, and the role of transformative partnerships. And there on the left, we have our social aims, which are focused on increasing well-being in our properties and our places, enabling thriving local economies, and maximising positive impact through our people and our partners. But clearly there is an intersection between those areas, which is something we've been thinking a lot about recently and how to better articulate and draw together. But one example I would give of how that intersection comes to life, I'll just tell you a little bit more about on the next slide, is our retrofit programme. So this is one major route to realising our carbon reduction targets. By 2030, we're going to have invested over 115 million in retrofitting our portfolio. And so far, we have retrofitted just over 1 million square feet of homes and commercial space. However, as the next slide shows us, there is a major skills gap. And the construction sector is exposed to that skills gap more than most, which is what this graph on the right shows us. So 30% of existing roles in the sector are anticipated to be in demand as a result of the transition to a low carbon economy. And a further third are expected to need to retrain, which means about two-thirds of the existing workforce in the construction sector are expected to be impacted. So that's the highest proportion of jobs impacted by a transition to net zero of any sector in the UK. So given this challenging context, we commissioned research to assess the current skills gap, from which we've produced a model that estimates the workforce needed to complete a retrofit programme of the UK's historic buildings. And if we could go on, Gary, what that concluded is that we need over 105,000 workers every year for the next 3 decades if we're going to decarbonise the UK's historic buildings in line with our 2050 net zero target. And right now, the UK has only half the skilled workers it needs to retrofit the buildings. So this is a really great example of where we have a significant climate-driven carbon need, but which has huge economic and employment potential alongside. The highest demand for roles were things like electricians, plumbers, glazing work, installing and repairing mechanical ventilation, heat pump work. So one conclusion of that research was that we need government to work on a national retrofit strategy that sets out a clear path for upskilling the current workforce while bringing in a whole new generation of workers into the sector too. So that's one area we see huge potential in building a green economy. And it's something we're talking to Groundwork about, how we may develop a programme in London that supports those people who are most in need, who, as Graham referred to at the back of the queue, for entry-level roles into retrofit. But to date, our work with Groundwork has really been focused on our Greener Futures programme. We could go on, Gary. This is our charity programme, which we launched just over 2 years ago now, focused on that intersection of climate and community. And the programme has 3 aims. We could go on, please. So to support training and jobs in the green economy, to help communities take climate action in their neighbourhoods, and to improve young people's access to nature. And we deliver those aims through a mix of grants, fundraising and volunteering, together with Groundwork as our corporate charity partner, who we've made a 4-year commitment to, who are sort of headline partner in shaping and steering this programme for us, and some other brilliant partners who help deliver our grants programmes, in particular the London Community Foundation and the Westminster Foundation. So we're just halfway through that 4-year commitment we've made to this programme and those aims, and we are already seeing some incredible impact. As the next slide shows us, the programme has so far funded almost 40 community projects, which collectively are benefiting thousands of people living in and around our places and generating outcomes such as 1,000 people using local public space for the first time. And with Groundwork, we've been able to help over 50 unemployed Westminster residents access training and go on to secure qualifications and long-term jobs in the green economy. And we're also having a material impact on improving public spaces, in particular parts of Westminster that need it most. So over the past 2 years, we've actually volunteered over 3,000 hours of our time, primarily with Groundwork's green teams, to help improve public spaces in what is actually one of the most densely populated wards in the whole country and is the most deprived ward in Westminster, which is where we are based. So just to say a little bit more about the training and jobs fair, as we can see on the next slide, of those 51 people who have so far accessed training, 46 have gone on to secure qualifications, 28 have gone on to long-term employment with a brilliant range of employers, a few examples you can see there. This has happened as a result of the 2 Groundwork programmes that we support in Westminster. So one is called Westminster Wheels and the other is called Green Teams. But the premise of both programmes is very similar. In short, Groundwork give people a job for 6 months where they train in being a cycle mechanic or a gardener in this instance, whilst also then supporting them into long-term employment thereafter. And the really great thing about these programmes is that the trainees are out earning from day one, gaining new skills from day one, and doing valuable work for their wider communities. So whether that be refurbishing bicycles that would otherwise go into the waste stream or improving local green spaces. There's a few quotes on the right there, which I think really speak for themselves as to what trainees feel about the quality of the programmes that Groundwork are delivering. And on the next slide, we can see a little bit more of that come to life from some of the trainees. So Saffron, who lives with her mum in the part of Westminster I just spoke about, recently completed a training programme with Westminster Wheels and went straight on to secure long-term employment as a professional bike mechanic. And Mark, on the right, has been living also in that estate we've been volunteering in for the past 20 years. He had been in poor health, unemployed for over a year, but is now nearing the end of his training programme and also has a long-term role lined up with the City Council. So I hope those numbers, those stories help give a flavour of how across our business we're beginning to think about green skills. There are some clearly technical requirements, there are some entry-level requirements, and we are working really hard on trying to think about how we can tie both together to deliver both on our climate and carbon goals, but as much social benefit to the people who live in and around our places as possible. And in particular, that opportunity through programmes like these with Groundwork to build a pipeline of local people who are really in need of those opportunities to be ready and equipped to embrace the opportunities that we have both within our supply chain and directly with our own workforce in the years ahead. I think I'll leave it there, Graham.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Kate. And thanks again for the support of you and all of your colleagues back at Grosvenor helping to make all of that happen. We're going to switch the focus now from Westminster and London to Greater Manchester. I'm delighted to be joined by Venetia, who leads all of our employment-related activity in that part of the country, to give us a few more practical examples of how this plays out. Need to come off mute, Venetia.
Yeah, I know.
There we go.
It's only been 4 years. So I'm Venetia Knight. I'm the Director of Employment and Enterprise at Groundwork Greater Manchester. I joined Groundwork as a volunteer nearly 30 years ago as a woodland project assistant. So I've had a sort of a lifetime career at Groundwork, starting as a young person with an environmental degree who couldn't get a job. So now I have responsibility for all the trust sort of employment and skills provision, as Graham said. So we specialise on supporting young people, as well as people involved with the criminal justice system, care experienced people, armed forces veterans, disabled people and people with health conditions. So we're always trying to tailor routes into work for people with additional needs. So along with employability and coaching support services, we provide vocational training to support people into careers in construction and the green economy. And as the enterprise part of my job, I have responsibility for our construction and landscaping services. So I'm also a recruiting employer in the green economy. So I kind of look at these issues as an employer as well as a training provider, I suppose. So as I've talked to the chamber as they develop their LSIP, I've been talking about our skills shortages and our concerns about whether we can get people with the right skills to meet our future plans. So our sort of work around the green economy has sort of kind of the strands that Graham was talking about. We really want to educate people about jobs and careers in the green economy. People don't understand what is required, what the opportunities are. And we want people to understand that all jobs will need to change as we transition to a low carbon economy. So we're interested in training people now to access those jobs. It's like dealing with the issues within the sort of low carbon buildings and the need for a future workforce now, and increasing for retrofit. But we want people to understand that all jobs are going to change and that they need to start thinking about it now. We really want to be influencing people when they're making their options in school in year 9 in particular. So we deliver training courses and interventions to help people start their career. And we have a particular focus on equality of opportunity. So it's not necessarily just for graduates, but sort of for people who are, as Graham said, at the back of the queue, often have particular barriers, socioeconomic barriers. They may be institutionalised, and helping those people to get a foothold in the green economy and fundamentally get a good job that pays well with future prospects. So I'm going to tell you about 3 of the initiatives that we're involved with in Greater Manchester. So the first one is low carbon careers. So this is a sort of a dedicated pre-recruitment course to enable people to get their first job in the green economy. So we design kind of 4 to 6 week training programs. They've all got a core of education and learning, and then there's particular tailoring to sort of a subsector of the green economy. So we've covered an introduction to retrofit, waste management, as well as careers in the natural environment sector. So all of our courses involve classroom-based activity, as well as site visits and practical training. That may be practical training on site, or it may be workshop training to develop to sort of have sort of taste skills around construction. With employer involvement is really important. So employers are involved with all of these courses. They come to the sessions and meet people. They facilitate site visits so that people on the courses can ask questions and really find out about what jobs are like. in those sectors. So we also provide training to achieve qualifications and different license to practice. So everybody gets carbon literacy, everybody gets relevant health and safety qualifications. And then we're also doing work preparation and preparing people for job interviews. We fix up guaranteed interviews with employers. And then once people are in work, we provide post-employment support. So this is just like a core model of sort of green economy training that we provide. That's about skills development and sort of good careers advice and interaction with employers. So if you could go on to the next. So bit sort of building on from low carbon careers, where we've been delivering work in the community, we've progressed into delivering training within prison settings. So we've always had a focus on supporting people involved with the criminal justice system for a long time. And just when the pandemic started, we received some funding from the City and Guilds Foundation to set up a sort of Green Start programme, training people in prison to understand sort of green careers in the construction industry, so we started delivering that a couple of years ago, and over the last sort of 18 months, we've been delivering DFE funded skills boot camps in a prison. So we deliver a sort of construction multi-skills with retrofit skills. So we're getting people ready for work. They're getting trade skills in sort of key areas like joinery and plumbing, as well as understanding application to retrofit. So again, employers are heavily involved with our sort of the design of the course. They help us design it in the first place. They come in, deliver workshops for us. They interview the men in prison, and then they employ people on the outside. So it's completely integrated, with Wilmot Dixon being our sort of founding employer partner, who've been supporting us for a long time. This has been a really sort of successful model. So around 60% of the men that we've trained in the H&P Forest Bank in Salford have progressed into employment in the construction industry following release. So some of them are linked to retrofit, but some of them are just straight construction jobs. But fundamentally, we need more people to go into the construction industry, so then they can be upskilled to sort of take on the sort of retrofit and other sort of green construction activity. And more recently, we've been delivering a sort of a women into construction training program at HMP Style, which is a women's prison in the Northwest. And again, that's been delivered in partnership with Wilmot Dixon and Galloway Construction, who've co-delivered the programme, brought tradespeople in to meet the women, to run sort of have-a-go sessions. And, you know, the women are still in custody, but we're pretty confident we'll get some good outcomes, because employers are already offering them opportunities for when they come out. So we're quite keen to extend more activity into prison. There's a lot of untapped talent, and fundamentally, if we can get people out of prison and into a good job with a you know, good salary and a decent future, then they're much less likely to reoffend. And at the same time, we're sort of filling skills shortages within industries. So next slide. So similar to the New to Nature programme that has been highlighted, we've been involved in a programme called Greater Manchester Green Futures, where we provide paid work placements for people, again, priority groups of people who have got barriers to the labour market. So these are kind of 3 to 6 months salaried work placements. They can be with a wide range of employers, public, private, third sector, and in different areas of the green economy. So that's sort of construction, land management, conservation, energy, transport, as well as sort of education and sort of sustainability roles. So Groundwork has always sort of valued paying people paying people to work. So it's on the principle, it's always easier to get a job if you've got a job. So if we pay people on a transitional employment basis, or an ILM, and then support them to sort of hop from that job where they've proved they can hold down the job, they've got references, they've got skills, and then they move on to the next job. You get much better job outcome rates for people, and it's just such a good way for people to get started in their career, rather than just training or just doing sort of a work placement. So within our GM Green Futures, as well as that sort of wage and track record of employment. There's a package of vocational training, one-to-one coaching support, and sort of helping people to build networks, build professional networks, careers advice around what next. And so some people have sort of stayed with their employer, and other people have then progressed onto a job with another employer. So these are sort of, this is a sort of a program that we run in Greater Manchester with other sort of social enterprise partners and housing providers, but it's a sort of a model that basically Groundwork delivers in different locations, whether that's London or other parts of the country. So there's a kind of a core approach that Groundwork has around getting people at the foothold for a career in the green economy, is starting with these kind of initiatives. So those are the 3 examples that I was going to talk about. Thank you.
That's fabulous. Thanks very much, Venetia. Brings it all to life. Makes it real. As I said at the outset, there's no requirement for people to participate and jump in and prolong the discussion. This was always intended to be we'll tell you some of the stuff that we're doing. We hope it will be of interest, and we hope you'll engage with us in order to build some of this work. But there is time before our allotted close time. Should anybody want to jump in with a question for Venetia or Kate or for myself, or share some perspectives of their own about these issues, just because people might need a minute or two to just percolate and think around that. I just had one thing that I thought I'd ask you both whilst I've got you, which is that if you're a contractor or an SME working in one of these rapidly changing and growing economic sectors in the green economy, and you're hearing people from Groundwork say, can you engage with people that are prison leavers or care leavers, or people who have been long-term unemployed as part of your workforce, the natural reaction is likely to be, that sounds a bit difficult. We've got jobs to do. We've got targets to meet. We've got people breathing down our necks in terms of performance and safety and everything else. How do we overcome that in order to ensure that people get a kind of work-like and work-ready experience working alongside either big contractors or very kind of fleet-of-foot mobile SMEs? And I think all of these sectors, retrofit in particular, is you're either at one end of that spectrum or the other, aren't you? You're either a massive contractor or you're a micro business. Any thoughts on how we overcome those barriers? Venetia, this is kind of day job for you, isn't it?
Yeah. So people do have concerns, and I suppose, and when you work with businesses, you sometimes have people who are at a certain layer of the business as well up for this sort of thing. They're really keen to sort of hit social value targets. They really understand why it's important to sort of deliver this kind of social justice and create opportunities for people. And then you may be working with people on site, on the ground, who've got, a build, they've got deadlines, they've got targets. So there can sometimes be a bit of a mismatch, I suppose, about different aspirations or different objectives within the business at different points. So for us, it's being quite realistic about what additional support people need, being really honest, so people are you're not sort of overselling, over-promising, you're being really clear. For us, making sure that we've done a lot of prep with people in the first instance, making sure they absolutely understand about attendance and timekeeping, because that's an absolute number one. I kind of ought to talk about construction in particular because it's a lot of what we're doing. But it's providing sort of continued support. So the individual has support from us for a period of time, and the employer knows who we are and talks to us. And so we work together as a team. So when we're working with businesses like Wilmot Dixon, that's what they get from us, so that we've not just placed somebody with them, we have a relationship with them for a period of time while they settle in and sort of normalise into sort of working routines and practices and expectations, and that's what makes a difference. And when people see that it works, they tell other people and they tell their colleagues, and it changes the mindset within the workforce, so that people understand that they're not always going to be perfect from day one. There are going to be issues, stuff will happen, and if we work together, we can solve them. But I think as well, there are a lot of labour market shortages. There are a lot of issues with, that people it doesn't just mean that somebody from a disadvantaged background is more or less reliable than anyone else. There are a lot of challenges within the labour market, so people understand that you have to put a bit of work in sometimes, and you get paid back from that.
Thanks. Kate, are you going to be requiring more of your contractors to do this kind of stuff? And if you require, can you support?
So I guess what we wouldn't expect to be doing is a blanket requirement. So it will be quite contextual to the specific local needs. And I think that's important from a support point of view as well, because in any given location, there's probably different types of need from a beneficiary point of view. So I know, for example, in Westminster, there's actually a lot of over 50s who are unemployed currently. And I think if you can ensure that what you are targeting in terms of beneficiary is actually relevant locally, then you increase your chances of being able to access support from the local authority, from other local employers, and actually trying to build sort of coalitions and broader partnerships around these types of programs and trying to do it on a sort of one-to-one basis. Because you said, Graham, you never do anything alone, and like this would be an absolute space where we wouldn't ever try to do something of this sort alone, but having the right partner in place, ensuring it was responding to actual local need, involving the local authority, whose employment support services are often quite tailored to that local need as well, would be really useful. And in terms of what we actually expect our contractors to do, we have targets around apprenticeships and we have targets around local employment, but we actually don't have a sort of specific subset of targets around, for example, prison leavers. I think that's a really interesting example of an area that certainly we should look more at in future though.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm just going to leave one last gap just in case anybody wants to jump in. I'm conscious that on the screen you can see lots of Beth Staffords. That's something to do with the way we set up the link. So if you're behind a tile that says Beth Stafford and you're not Beth and you want to jump in, then please let us know who you are. But Vivian, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. I've actually got 2 questions, which is a bit cheeky. Thank you all for that. It's really interesting, and we should all know more. So I'm in the real estate industry, Kate's in the real estate industry. Looking at some of the names on the screen here, there's a lot of people in the real estate industry who are listening to this morning. Clearly, there is an industry need to be responding to this skills shortage because it's affecting construction more than anything else. What do you think we can do as an industry to scale up all the fantastic endeavours that you're involved in? So that's number one. And then the next one, we're talking about marginalized people suffering most, which is the tragedy of it, isn't it? So let's think about affordable housing, not necessarily social housing, but housing homes that are affordable to people, which we have a significant shortage of. How do we manage the viability gap of retrofitting with affordable housing? Have you come across, Graham and Denisha probably, have you come across any finance models that enable that to happen, that release that opportunity so that the maybe uninhabitable but inappropriate built environment that we've got can actually be converted and put to valuable use? Sorry, 2 questions. I don't mind which you answer if we're short of time.
Do you want to jump in, Denisha? I know you've got some local programs that have got some relevance here, haven't you?
So don't ask me about the funding packages because it's not something that I manage. But we have at Groundwork, we run an empty homes program where we sort of take on properties that are uninhabitable or in a very poor state and basically do them up to a sort of higher environmental performance. We often provide training opportunities within that sort of within the work program, so people are working with contractors on the team sort of to develop the skills, and then once we've done up the properties, then we then sort of work with a sort of social landlord to rent out the properties for affordable rent. So we primarily provided accommodation for particular groups. So we sort of created flats for care experience people, so it's their first accommodation once they leave care. We're just finishing a project where we've restored a sort of an Edwardian property, which will provide flats for armed forces veterans, as well as a sort of facility, a sort of a community facility for veterans. So I think it can be quite hard work sort of putting the funding package together and then sorting out the model for how you sort of manage the properties longer term for us, because we're not a housing provider. But it's something that we would definitely like to do more of. You know, and it's a kind of a no-brainer, isn't it, really, to sort of bring properties back into use and provide homes for people. I would really like to do things where we were, you know, like kind of like the youth build projects, where we're properly doing the people who do up the properties under the supervision then get to live in them. So I'm quite keen at looking at those kind of models. Say if we've trained people up in prison, if you know anything about the prison system, you'll know that people coming out of prison, accommodation is a massive problem, and it's one of the reasons why people reoffend, because they've got nowhere to live. So if we can train people with construction skills in the prison, they come out, are involved in sort of renovating a property which they can then live in and then have a job in the construction industry, that would be a pretty virtuous circle.
And if I can just jump in on some of the scaling up issues, one of the things that we're obviously aware of at the moment is that there are large retrofit programs underway, government-funded retrofit programs, social housing decarbonisation programs, and local authority-based home upgrade programs. And one of the things we're concerned about, because we see, is that residents of homes who may stand to benefit most from, you know, living in an upgraded home are the ones that maybe get missed out in terms of those programs, because there isn't enough engagement at the front end as to what these programs are about and how you manage the disruption and what the benefits will be, and neither is there enough advice at the back end, if your home has been upgraded, how you actually live in your home in order to reap the benefits of that new kit and equipment or measures that have been installed in your house. So shameless plug, the first one of these sessions that we did a couple of weeks ago was all about our energy efficiency advice service. And we're doing a lot of work at the moment trying to understand how you broaden that out from helping people who are in fuel poverty just reduce the level of their bills, to being how you support people through a retrofit process and how that connects in with some of these large scale decarbonisation programs. So, you know, going back to what I said at the outset, you know, we're, in the grand scheme of things, we're a relatively small charitable entity attempting to have a difference on what is a massive social issue. But if some of that expertise and some of that capacity can be plugged in to some of the bigger programs that are being run by major contractors in this space, then I think, and they're targeted at those people who might otherwise be overlooked in terms of the benefits, I think that's absolutely where we want to see ourselves operating. And
as well, I suppose, in answer to your other kind of question about what to do, I think co-design is so important. And you know, for me, sort of being an employment and skills provider, our best stuff is done with employers. So that we work together to create solutions, and that's what we're doing in prison. And as if we kind of move into running other kind of workshops, we're sort of thinking about insulation and dry lining, and we're working with employers to sort of build that model. So not only as I knowing that if I provide the right training, then I'm going to be able to get those men or women into work on the outside. I'm providing the right kind of training for the industry. So that's how we're sort of approach model. That's what we need to do more of.
And just a quick comment back to Emily in the chat about the retrofit hub, Anisha. We linking in with the retrofit, we're certainly linking in with the retrofit academy, aren't we, on some of this training?
Yeah, so I suppose for what we've been talking about, I suppose, is trade skills, so that we're sort of thinking about the workforce for the doing, whereas the retrofit academy are sort of doing the professional side of things, so that we're making linkages around training up retrofit assessors and coordinators and sort of making those links with our energy advisors team, because they merge together. But also I think that people who started off as an energy advisor are much better at working with people and helping them to understand the implications of retrofit, and like that sort of understanding, once it's done, how you're going to make the best use out of it so that your home is warm and your bills are low. So
brilliant. Yeah. Thanks. Kate, anything before I close that you wanted to throw in?
Hi Vivian, nice to see you here. So companies who, like ourselves, are investing their own capital in retrofit, I think by and large are generally trying to prioritise that money for the affordable and council housing, some social housing in their portfolio. But I know certainly in Westminster they've also been able to access central government grants to retrofit social housing, and then match funding that through their own funds from some housing revenue, and in particular their carbon tax, which they actually are consulting on proposals to increase at the moment. But it's, you know, one sort of funding source, a carbon offset fund for putting back into the homes that need this work the most as well.
Brilliant, thanks. Okay, I promised everybody we'd not take up too much of their day. We've gone past 9:45, which is our notional stop time. So we will draw it to a close. Thanks to those people that joined us for this session. If you're a glutton for punishment, we've got another one in a week's time, next Wednesday morning, where we'll be looking at the next bit of our strategy, which is all around climate action and climate adaptation in particular. So if you'd like to join us for that, then you'll see all the links doing the rounds on social media. Other than that, if there's anything that you wanted to say or wanted to ask but didn't, please do drop us a line. And I just want to say thank you again to Kate for joining us today, and again for all the support that Grosvenor have provided for this work, and thanks to Venetia for sparing some time to talk to us today. And we'll leave it there, and thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.